Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. It's Tuesday. It's Owner Stories Day. I'm recording this on a Monday. It's Monday. I won't hide the fact that these are always recorded a little bit in advance, so I always have a Owner Stories for you. If you haven't been here before, my name is Michael Barth. This is the PorscheCooled Podcast, and this is Tuesday's episode where I talk to other owners, other Porsche owners around the world. It's a great series. I'm really enjoying it. I can't believe, I was telling my wife last night that we're up to number 57. I just can't believe I'm up to 57 in owner stories. It seems crazy from the very first one with Nick. And I know I've said this before, but it's a crazy ride to get here. And I've spoken to so many interesting and great people and very friendly people. And I've really enjoyed making all the connections. And I know I've said that before, but I just wanted to say it again. So today I am going to connect via Zoom. All the owner stories are done via Zoom. I'm going to connect and chat with Geoff. Geoff is coming from Sydney, actually. Geoff's in Sydney, Australia, a place where I will be back in very, very soon. Those of you who follow my Instagram would have noticed that, yes, I have got a ticket, and yes, we are going back to Australia, which is great. Geoff's got a really interesting story. I've been sitting here for the last 20 minutes reading Geoff's email again and trying to work out how to fit it all into an hour or just over an hour. Geoff's owned a lot of Porsches. I'm going to let him tell you guys. He's got a few now, which are very, very cool. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. And I'm going to probably go in a different direction on this one because I just want to get I want you guys to get the most out of it. And I want you guys to get the most out of what it's like to own that many Porsches and what, I guess not what tips, but what advice Geoff can give me, can give you guys if you're interested, on what he looks for and the process he goes through. But let's get into that shortly. I've got 10 minutes or so to connect. Let me just make sure my Zoom is working. Let me get Geoff on the line, and let's get Geoff to talk about his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Geoff and I had a bit of I did an intro before Geoff came on, but we've been struggling for the last 30 minutes or so to try and get our systems to work and everything to work properly, but it's working now, so that's great. This, unfortunately, is always the problem using Zoom and using this sort of format. You sometimes have issues. But anyway, apart from that, I want everyone to, I'd like to welcome Geoff to the podcast. Hi, Geoff. How are you?
Michael, I'm excellent. Thank you. Lovely day in Sydney.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to getting back there, that's for sure. And I should tell the listeners you are from Sydney. And I did mention it in the brief intro that, you've owned a lot of Porsches. I didn't tell everyone how many you've owned. I just said you've owned a lot. So we'll get into that shortly. I'm coming back to Sydney. People who have actually sort of let it out. I'm going to be back in Sydney on the 19th of November, so I'm really looking forward to getting back to my 911, which is going to need a lot of tender care by Autohouse Hamilton, that's for sure.
Well, PorscheCooled should do some sort of coffees and car run because we're all dying. We just came out of lockdown last weekend, and I did a 2.5-hour run in my Porsche 912 just to try and break in the new engine rebuild that I've been running around the block.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I mean, I've noticed everyone in Sydney that I've sort of follow on Instagram posting there, and I know you're not on Instagram, but posting their weekend drives because of the lockdown. But let's get straight into it, Geoff, because there's a lot to talk about. So I always like to start the podcast, and you've listened to them before, and you know what it's all about. But I always like to start the podcast about where it all started. You know what I mean? Where the Porsche journey started for you. And a lot of the listeners. And a lot of people in owner stories as well. A lot of people that started later in life. Some people that started when they were a kid because their parents owned a Porsche. How did it all start for you? When did you first noticing Porsche, and when did you start thinking, hey, I've got to have one of those? I
grew up in Brisbane, and my father was a mad car enthusiast. He had Jaguars, and when I was in my young teens, my father brought home a Aston Martin DB4, which was a pretty cool car. Anyway, my father's friends all had sports cars, mainly English.
Okay.
So my Uncle Charlie would come over in a 3.8 E-Type. And my Uncle Steve had a MGB. And, of course, I was only a young teen. But they'd take us for rides in these lovely old sports cars. Unbelievable. I'd get dropped to school in a DB4 Aston, which was pretty amazing.
What did the other kids say when you were getting dropped off in that? Did they know what it was?
Everyone called it the James Bond car, and all my mates wanted to go for a ride in my father's car. And the one thing with my father was he was fairly accommodating. He'd take the guys to the Aston and he'd give it a little bit so they could hear the bark out of those lukey mufflers. It was a nice old thing. And but what got me started on the Porsche autism spectrum journey was one of the chaps. Dad had a couple of mates he used to work with. Porsches were quite rare in Brisbane. You didn't see a lot of them. And a chap called Tony, I won't say his last name, but turned up at my father's place in a 3-litre turbo. And it was probably one of the early ones delivered to Brisbane. I'd never seen one before, and it was like a spaceship. It was just unbelievable. And
so this was a new car, Geoff? This was a new car that your dad's friend bought?
It was a brand new 3-litre turbo. Probably would have been it was an early one. It would have been probably a 77.
Wow.
And it was it was purple. And I remember him turning up at our place. And I'd seen Jags and other Astons and things. And this turbo just took my breath away. It was just, for a young kid, it was just an amazing car. And that was, from that point on, I thought, wow, this is amazing. And for Brisbane, that was a rare car, very rare car.
Yeah, very rare, very rare. So what did your dad think about this, though? Because your dad's into the Aston. Your uncle's, wasn't it? You said they're into. So everyone's into English cars here. They're into English sports cars, and you start to go. To go in a different direction. Was your dad ever interested in the into Porsches or German cars, or was he really a British sort of sports car sort of guy?
He was British. My father bought, as soon as the Range Rover was released, he bought a brand new 2-door Range Rover. He had about 5 in a row. Mum had Jaguar Sovereigns, and Dad would have a classic sports car. But I did go down the British route. So I did buy an MGB when I was 17.
Okay.
And that was probably I had a Mini Cooper S first. Then I had the MGB, which I paid for myself. Then we're talking early 80s. I had made a little bit of money on the stock market with a few lucky tips.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, I'm early 20s. And
let's pause for a second. Though.
Yeah.
So, 77, you see that turbo. So at that point. Yeah. At that point, like you said, Porsches are very rare in Brisbane. Even in the 70s, not many people are buying 911s, right? That the quantities they sell are quite low. So is that the reason why you? So it's purely a financial thing. You're just getting into your license, so you follow your dad's kind of path, and you think, okay, I'm going to go down the English sports car direction. Is that how it was for you?
Well, they were affordable. I mean, and I know you don't normally talk dollars and cents and money, but you could buy an MGB for say $5,000, and I'd save that, so I could afford to buy an MGB.
Okay. But
at the time, Porsches were they were a lot more than an MGB, so that they were unobtainium for me at that time.
And there wasn't many on the used market, was there? There wasn't like an abundance of used Porsches around. I don't think there were anyway.
No, but as I said, I had a little bit of luck and made some money on the stock market.
Yeah.
And I was early 20s, and there was a car yard in Brisbane called Raymond Motors. Right. And they had a 1973 911E in burnt orange, and at the time it was $28,000.
Wow.
And I had the money. Australian delivered 5-speed, black interior. And I had the money, and I said to my father, I want to buy this car. Now, I was still early 20s, and my father absolutely did not want me to get that car because he thought I'd probably kill myself in it because, you know what? Maybe my father was right. So I didn't buy that. I didn't buy the Porsche
You didn't buy it, Jeff. That's a car to have in your 20s, though. I mean, we say 28,000 now like it's so cheap, but I mean then it wasn't. You made some money, but it was still an expensive car, right? It wasn't a cheap car.
Well, at the time in Brisbane, you could buy a house quite out a bit. You could buy a house for 45,000.
Yeah. See, there you go.
But so that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. So you see the burnt orange, you attempt to buy it, your dad says no way. So what do you do then? What happens next? When do you come across another one that you want to buy?
Fast forward the clock. I moved to Sydney. I'm married. I just had my first child. I'd got myself established, and I was in a financial situation that I could. I always had an MG. I've always had an MG. I've still got one.
Okay.
But I thought to myself, right, now's the time. And I actually tracked down my father's old DB4 Aston with the chap who bought it off my father.
Wow.
And I approached the guy, and at the time, it certainly wasn't cheap, but I had the money and I could buy it. And I had a chat to my father. Now, he's in Brisbane, I'm in Sydney. And I said, look, Dad, I've tracked down your old DB4 Aston. I'm going to buy it. And he said, why do you want to buy it? And I said, well, I used to ride it when I was younger, and it was a great car. And he said to me, I think you're old enough now. He said, that was my dream car. Go buy your dream car.
Oh, that's good.
And
that's cool.
Then I decided, well, my dream car was a 911. I'm buying.
Yep. All right. So let's get into that. So you skipped on the Aston. What's the first 911? What's the first one that you bought?
I bought a 911 SC Targa in mocha brown, 5-speed, Australian delivered, fairly low mileage. I think it had led a hard life, as in probably stolen and recovered, but I love that car, and I drove it every day.
What year did you buy that,
82.
Jeff? 82. So that's your first one. So you're in
your... No, the car was an 82, but no, I bought the car in the 90s.
In the 90s.
It was probably a bit over a 10-year-old car.
How were the prices in the 90s of the Targas, the SC Targas?
They were cheap. Especially this one was mocha brown. Nobody wanted it at all. I think he was wanting 40,000. I bought it for 33.
Okay, that's good. And the interior was it tan?
Brown.
Or black? Brown interior.
Tan,
so it's brown and brown.
Brown and brown. That was my first Porsche. But
I like them today, though.
The Targa. You know what? I love the Targa. I love the car. It was a great car. It had little seats in the back. At the time, my son, he was only a tiny little fellow, and he could fit in the back seat, which is probably highly illegal now, but we could actually go out in it. But, I love that car. It was a good car. But I used it as a daily company car, just as a runner. Okay,
so that's your first entry into Porsche. You've got your first Porsche. The dreams come true. You followed your passion from seeing that first turbo when you were a kid. You didn't go down you did go down the English route. You sort of, you've got the MG like you said.
Yeah.
How was the experience though when you took delivery of that car? Can you take your mind back and think, was it a bit surreal? Was it exciting as everyone thinks it's going to be when you get your first 911?
It was. It was powerful for what it was. They're a fairly light car. They're very lively. I think the thing is I was trying a bit too hard going to Kiama, and I lost the back on it at Kiama, and that gave me a hell of a scare. And everything that kept going into my head at the time as the back's going out was everyone had said, put your foot into it, which I did. I actually accelerated, and it kicked the back in. But that car scared me in the fact that I think the car was probably more than I was.
Right. So you're in the 90s.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I like I said, I used it as a company car, and I think I ran it until I nearly put 100,000 kilometres on it, and then I bought another one.
You bought another one. You're not tempted to keep that and start the collection and have more than one Porsche. So you traded up. What is the next?
It was brown.
It's brown. So you think, okay, I'm going to get a more popular color. What is the next? I mean, we don't have time to go through all the 16 that 16 that you've owned. But what was the next? So then you sell that one. What's the next memorable one that you bought?
Well, the next one that I bought after that, I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is interesting in the fact that it's currently for sale at the Classic Throttle Shop right now, the next car I bought. Yes, and it was a summer yellow 87 Cabriolet with a G50 gearbox. That was my old car.
Geoff, I was looking at that yesterday. And thinking, why has this car sat there for so long? Because I quite like that in the Cabriolet, the convertible of that model. And that summer yellow color has really come of age. You know what I mean? And it looks in beautiful condition, and the price is actually reasonable compared to other G50s, right? Very reasonable.
It's very reasonable. Same thing. That car was for sale at a car yard at Roselle on Victoria Road. I think it was Len Vine.
Yes.
And they had, I think, 55,000 on it. And I'd already sold the Targa because I thought I'd be better off having the money. And look, now as then, Porsche sold okay. There was no problem to sell them. So I walked into them and said, look, it's yellow. No one wants it.
Yeah.
And I bought that car for 47,000.
Wow.
And it was a great car, never gave me a day of grief. It was just a really nice thing to drive. I never drove it with the roof down unless my son or daughter said, Dad, put the roof down. Other than that, I just drove it every day with the roof up, but it never missed a beat. That is actually a really good car.
So someone's looking for a 911 and they want the 87, 88, G50 or whatever. So you think the Cabriolet is a good choice for someone? Because everyone goes for the hard top. Everyone wants a coupe.
Well, I was the same because...
Is it underrated?
Yes, it is underrated. I bought an 89 coupe straight on after. I had the yellow one for 3 years and I bought an 89 coupe, a red one. So, but everyone calls it Guards Red, but by 89, I think they call it Indian Red. It looks like Guards Red. But right. I bought a Guards Red, non-sunroof, 5-speed, black trim, Australian delivered, really low mileage. And I think I sold the yellow one for 50 and I paid 65 for the 89 coupe. So I did what everyone seems to want to do.
Yeah. But don't you think the price of the Cabriolet now, the one that Classic Throttle has, I know it's expensive and people think, 140 is a lot, but comparatively, I think it's actually quite okay price, don't you think? I mean, it looks in beautiful condition still. It looks in really good condition.
Yes, no, I don't think the car's ever had any grief, and I think it is a really good buy. There's nothing wrong with Cabriolets at all, nothing at all. Everyone wants the purity of line of a coupe, and I understand that. But for me, at the time, I just used them as cars, but really good cars. I love them, but
yeah,
I wasn't thinking of collectability or anything like that. There was nothing like that. It was just I would run them to 100,000 kilometres and sell them.
It's the enjoyability of it, isn't it? And I think that's the thing, the trend today where people are, I know people buy with their heart, but sometimes you miss these cars that are underrated, and like I said, that one sat there for a while. There's another one at Richmond's as well in Adelaide, I think, isn't it? Richmond's in Adelaide, who they have a silver 993 Cabriolet for sale, which looks pretty good as well, at about the same price as that one that you used to own at Classic Throttle. Both cars have been sitting there for a little while. The 993 actually for quite some time, and it still hasn't sold. So there are cars out there. It's just that everyone wants what everyone else wants at the moment. That's kind of the trend. But yeah. So let's see. On the podcast, and you've listened to many episodes. And I said it to you, I think, briefly before we started recording. I'm just an enthusiast, right? I'm not an expert of any caliber. And I think, that's what a lot of the listeners are like, and they want to learn from it. And that's why I think we all have a love of Porsche. It doesn't matter if you own one or if you own 20 or whatever it is, or you own three, amazing cars today, which I think your three cars are pretty amazing cars. And when we get into it, people will realize, and they've probably seen it in the title already, and you've got this... you've got this wealth of experience. I like how you just said, the memorable car. One of them is that Cabriolet. I think that's interesting because most people wouldn't pick that as a memorable car, but you did.
Well, here's a very interesting point for you. And I've been thinking, because, look, I'm like every other enthusiast. I'm always looking, always thinking. And I've got my 912, which is a right-hand drive, 5-speed, short wheelbase. And it's probably worth a bit. And I've been thinking of maybe if I got rid of that to buy something like that yellow Cabriolet type vehicle. That's
right.
because they are such a good car.
Don't tell me you're selling that 912, Geoff. It makes me think how I'm going to get the money together.
Oh, no, I'm not there to try to tempt you to buy my 912. No,
especially
the 912 is
let's get into that. But okay, so you're going along your Porsche journey. You know, you have an SC Targa, you get the G50 Cabriolet. Let's go to another one.
The 89. Let's go to another one.
Let's go to another one. Not the current cars you have, but let's go to another one along the journey. Another one that is a memorable one for you. Another one that maybe, let's just say maybe it's a regret. Let's just say that maybe you regret selling and you wish you could have it back.
I can tell you which car that was.
Yep.
When I had the 89 coupe, I'd never considered really anything, let's call it classic, 356, 912. I'd never considered anything like that. And a friend of mine had a 356C.
Okay.
And a silver. Anyway, he was a bit of a lad, and he got done for drink driving and trying to outrun the cops in the 356C.
Okay.
So what would happen was he lost his license for 12 months, and he would say, "Look, Geoff, could you take me for a drive in my car, just so I can get the wheels moving on it?" So I started to drive his 356C with him on weekends, just so I could get some exercise. And I thought to myself, there's something about these cars that was completely different to my 911s. So that led to the car that I probably regret selling, which was I bought a Australian-delivered 356C 1965 model, light ivory with black trim, optional chrome wheels, and it was just
nice,
totally original. Never been restored, never been painted. It was just. And I paid $48,000 for that car, and it was just wonderful.
$48,000, wow. Yeah, this is the thing. 356s. I don't know. I've been resisting them, and now I just can't keep looking at them. I keep looking at them all the time. And I think I mentioned in a previous podcast, you might have heard it. I think I heard Seinfeld talking on Spike's Car Radio about he thinks the 356C is almost the perfect Porsche. Or the perfect 356.
Well, you asked which one I regret selling. But, when I started my company and I sold all my Porsches. I sold the coupe. I sold the C because I needed to raise every cent I could at the time. I had been consulting, and I decided to set up my own business, not consulting. And from that point on, the cars went, but not for too long.
Not for too long. Let's get into that. So 356, regret. 356C, people are sorting. I mean, obviously they're not that priced today. They're a lot more than that. Beautiful looking car. Finessed over how many years was it? 16 years or something, wasn't it? The first 356 was 48 or something, wasn't it? Or 49, somewhere like that?
The thing with the 356s, they only made 75,000 in their total production run.
Yeah.
And if you look at the production run of Porsche these days, they'd probably make more than that in 3 months.
Yes.
So vehicles like 356s, Australian-delivered 356s, this is part of my spectrum. I can quote numbers. Anyway, there was only 400 delivered to Australia.
Wow.
So people are looking for that. Now, that's just 356s. That's of all types.
Yeah.
So they're looking for the unicorn 356. Well, it must be Australian delivered, matching numbers, the colour I want, or it doesn't matter if it's an early 911 or 912. They're very hard to find. Yeah,
they are. They are. And more so today, of course. So let's move. You sent me in your email, and I just want to tell the listeners, you said in your email something like about how, you think the listeners will get a lot about the research, how you research the Porsche history on your cars and the process you follow.
I might use one of my cars as an example, and then they can see what I do. And it doesn't matter if it's an old 356 or 912, or if it's a current model. I had a Boxster S, and I do the same thing with every car I buy. I pretty much go to the ends of the earth to get its full history back with the car, because I think it's important. These cars are important, and the history is important. So with your permission, I could probably maybe use the 912 as an example.
Yeah, we can do that. I just want to introduce the listeners, though, to the cars that you have now, all right? Because I think, and we can start with was the 912 the first one you acquired out of the three you have now, or was it not the first?
No, out of the three that I have now, the Speedster was the first one I acquired.
Okay, so let's just do it in the progression. Let's just go in the progression, and then we'll get to the 912 and we can go in a bit deeper. So you've gone through your Porsche journey. You've had 16 Porsches, right? You've had 16 Porsches.
19.
19, yeah, no, but apart from these three that you currently own, you've had
these three, yes,
you've had 16. Yes. So then you get into the 17th, and the 17th one is, you just mentioned it then, and it's a very special one. Tell the listeners what the number 17 was.
Yeah, it's made in 56, but considered a 57 model, 356A Speedster, right-hand drive in Weiss, which is white, so not light ivory, but Weiss, with red trim. Plus, it has a hardtop. That's about the only option.
Now that's a very special car. Everyone that listens to the podcast, and I'm guessing all the guys that I've spoken to with 356s are going, wow, that's a very special car. So you mentioned to me that you had it's under restoration. How did you, just tell the listeners briefly how you found that car? Because it's a Japanese delivered car. So how did you find it,
Yes,
Geoff?
it is Japanese.
And when did you find it? How long ago, and how long is the restoration process taking?
I think I bought it 10 years ago, that car. The restoration only started a few years ago. It was a friend of mine. It was a Porsche 356 friend of mine that we'd swap parts and have a bit of a chat. And I'd sold him some engine parts for the Speedster. He bought it nearly 40 years ago, dismantled it and left it in pieces.
Right.
And he decided at some stage he was going to put it back together. I'd sold him some engine pieces, and I went to send them down to him, and he said, look, just keep them there for the moment. I said, well, that's unusual. What do you want me to keep your engine bits? And he said, I'm not real well at the moment. And I didn't know, but he was fighting cancer. He was in another state. Anyway, probably a month later, he called me and said, look, I don't think I'm getting any better. Would you be interested in maybe, purchasing the Speedster?
Okay.
And I said to him, look, I don't think I could afford it. And that was the truth. I didn't think I could afford it. And he says, well, why don't you come down and we'll have a chat? And you never know. So I went and had a chat. We spent the day, and the problem with the car, it had been pulled apart for so long. There were some bits missing and this and that, but it was 90% there.
Right.
Someone had stolen the steering wheel, so they took the whole steering column with the steering wheel.
Okay.
Things like that. But it had the soft top frame, soft top. He bought a lot of bits brand new in boxes. It had the optional hard top.
Wow.
Other than that, the car wasn't delivered with any options. Funnily enough, it wasn't really rusty, but she'd had a tap in the back at some stage and been repaired probably in the 60s. We spent the day together, and at the end of the day, he says, look, I've had the car so long, I just don't think I can part with it. And I said, that's fine, it's your car. Had a great day, it was all good. 2 weeks later, he calls me again and he says, I'm in palliative care. I went, oh, God, that's not good.
Okay.
And he said, look, I've decided if you'd like to buy the car, could you come and get it and just give the cash to my wife? And I said, well, we haven't even got a price. And anyway, I won't divulge the price, but let's just say I paid for it roughly what you'd pay for a 356 coupe restoration project.
Wow.
Which was, at the time, this is some years ago, anyway, it was under $30,000 I paid for that car.
Wow.
And that was a mate's deal. 10 years ago, but that was a mate's deal.
Yeah, and also he knew that you would look after it. He knew you were, you would follow it through. So have you actually driven the car? Like you said, it was in pieces. Do you do
No. It was in pieces when I bought it. I think I sent a photo of you when we had it dipped.
Yeah.
So it was so far pulled apart, we dipped it to see how bad if there was any problem with the body. Remarkably, the body is actually very good. So I'd kept it for some years and just collected parts, and I got everything that was missing.
Okay.
And I sort of got 3 of things because I've got 2 sets of bumpers and 2 sets of brakes and 3 windscreens, and another mate had a Speedster steering wheel because they're a different diameter, so I got that off him, and you just collect and collect and collect. I think I've got 5 pallets of spares for that car.
Wow. So Geoff, you get all the parts together, and then you decide, okay, now it's time to do this restoration. Is that what you do? So you've got all your parts.
Well, at the time, the guy who does my long-term restorations works from home. He just finished a 356 coupe for me, so I was waiting for him to finish that. He normally takes 4 years.
Right.
So he'd finished the coupe, and that was the next one that we were going to do. So that's why I had it.
How many 356s have you owned?
I've never added it up. It's probably 10 or 12.
How many?
10 or 12, I don't know.
So it's a car that you really do love then. You've owned, out of all the cars you've owned 10 or 12 356s.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so you've got the Pinnacle, you've got the Speedster. And it's no secret I listen to Spike's Car Radio, and I listen to Zuckerman talk about his 356 Speedster. And I think at one point he said that the restoration process was basically what he paid for the car. So I think it was basically another $250,000 or something just to fix the car up.
Well, that's a very good point. The cheapest part, if you're doing cars of that level, is buying the car. The dearest part is the restoration. So, for example, the thing that took that Speedster off the road back in the day was its gearbox. She basically run out of oil and she fried the gears.
Right.
So I've had a late model 741, which is a 356C,
right,
internals put in the case of the Speedster with Speedster gears. So I had the whole gearbox rebuilt, but with Speedster gears, but with the later model internals.
Okay.
But just that exercise alone, I had to buy a complete transaxle to get the slave internals. Then we had to rebuild that.
Wow.
I think I spent $15,000 just on a transaxle to build a bulletproof, lovely transaxle. This is what you take these cars on. Yeah, buying them is probably the cheapest part of it.
So in Australia, though, I mean, obviously in the US and LA and stuff, there's plenty of people, and UK and stuff, plenty of people that do 356 restoration. And I'm going to refer back to this episode when I heard him say it, because you'll know more about this. He said that the longest part of the restoration process, the thing that took a long time, was the people that do the body work. Because it's so specialized and
Correct.
They have certain people that do the body work. That's what eats up your years of these restorations. And then you've got to wait in the queue for the next person to, one car to finish before yours can slot in. How do you, in Australia, are you getting this done in Sydney? Is this the person that you said that works from home fixing it for you? How do you find the right person to bring this back to life?
The person who's doing the Speedster has done 3 of my 356s in the past, but you get to know who's good at what.
Yeah.
But the thing is with these older vehicles is you become a very good product, like a project manager.
Right.
And
yes.
I'm very good at, I can put a 356 back together and I can pull it apart and I know exactly all the bits. So I know them really well, but I can't paint the body or fix the body. So I've got a guy who will do that for me. But once I'll get the bare body shell back and I'll put it all back together myself because no one loves your car more than you do. Yeah. So after doing so many of them, I'm not a professional restorer. I'm just a project manager, but with assembly skills.
Okay.
And that's so then that might get us on to car number 2. Would you like to talk about the next one?
Yeah, we will. So under restoration, how many more years do you think it's got before you'll be driving it around Sydney?
I have said to the chap doing it for me that I really want it back within the year, because if he doesn't give it back to me within a year, I'll do something silly and buy another car.
Okay. You'll buy another 356.
I'll buy something, yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I've got to scratch that itch. Because to me, the Speedster for me is a pinnacle, yeah.
Oh, it's great, especially in that colour. It's not in the ivory. It doesn't have the yellow tone in the paint. It's in white. It's in like pure white almost, right? Which is actually really cool.
It's basically, I call it refrigerator white. But it's with the red trim.
Nice.
I'm going to do there's basically a charcoal metallic that was a genuine 356 colour. I'm going to do the hard top in that for a little bit of contrast.
Okay.
But other than that, the car will be just stock standard, back to original.
Yeah, there's something really nice about 356s in white and black. I don't know. I think those two colors are just, it just work. The shape just seems to work so well. I don't know whether you see more of the shape, but it always, I think they're the best two colors in my opinion. I mean, silver looks okay, but I think white and black are the ones. So this was a Japanese delivered car. We're not going to get in this too deep, but the Japanese delivered car. Have you actually, before your friend purchased the car, have you tried to find any history of this car as well? Is that something you've been researching?
Yes, I've done a little bit of research on the car. I do know that there's some people on the forums that have been looking for this particular car. That was in the past. But there were two delivered in right-hand. Like Japan also got left-hand drive cars. There was a US serviceman there at the time. But
yeah.
My car plus a sister car were delivered for the Tokyo Motor Show. And the other one is also Weiss, which I think must be to do with Japan's colour. I think that's one of their colours.
Yeah.
And it's got red trim, but it was optioned with a bench seat. Mine's just got standard speedster seats. It was a normal too. So, and it's the next chassis number to mine.
Oh, right.
That car is now in the States, from what I can gather. But other than that, I believe my car was in Japan for only 2 or 3 years. I can't tell you how it got to Australia, but it may have been a diplomat. I don't know.
Right.
And it's very difficult to track the car, but I've got the build spec, which is basically not much because it didn't really get an option.
Okay,
but,
so you've got this is Porsche number 17. You've got the 1956, 57 model, I think you said, 356 Speedster, right-hand drive, and then you think, okay, what else am I going to get? So what's the next one, Geoff?
Keeping in mind, I've had 356s all along.
Yes.
I had an Oslo blue 62 Australian delivered matching numbers, little 356B.
Oh, right. Wow.
75. So it's called a Super.
Yeah.
Anyway, that car, and I'll say Ronnie Goodman from Exclusive Bodyworks painted the body, and it was magnificent. I mean, it was probably the best paint job I've ever seen. And I put it back together. The car was completely, it was just an amazing car, wonderful history. I took back to the Nationals, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago. I can't remember.
Right.
And it won the Porsche champion outright out of every 356 that was entered. So it was the best car in Australia at the time. So that was great. But what it was is one of my customers, that little blue car was his dream car.
Okay.
So I said to him, let's go for a Zoom to Akuna Bay and have a coffee, and you can drive your dream car. Because I think people should, you should have friends and family drive these cars, because down the track, they could be the people you're selling them to.
Yep. True.
Anyway, he had an uncle who was retired who had a 911. And every time we'd always have a coffee and a chat, and I'd say, oh, how's your uncle's 911 going? So we went for a drive. He drove to Akuna Bay. We had a coffee. We're sitting there. And I said, how's your uncle's 911? And he says, oh, the uncle's going to sell the 911 to the next door neighbour, but the next door neighbour is stuffing around uncle.
Right.
Uncle was Peter. So I said, well, can I have the uncle's phone number? Now, the uncle was in Benora Point, which is up near the border of New South Wales and Queensland. So it's probably 1,000 kilometres from Sydney.
Yes.
I get 4 scratchy photos of this car sent to me by my friend, not by Peter. And the vehicle is a 1973 Australian delivered 911 coupe, TE, no sunroof, 5-speed. It's at the time bright red, non-matching engine. She had a 3-litre SC motor in the back. So let's call it a little bit of a hot rod. But if they hadn't flared the guards, it was pretty much standard except for it being painted. Okay. So I rang the uncle. We had a chat. And I said, look, I've seen the photos of the car. I'm interested. And he says, oh, really? And he says, well, I've promised it to the next door neighbour. I said, right. But she's stuffing me around. I said, yeah, I heard that. And he said, well, if you were interested to buy it, how quick could you pay for it? And I said, well, I could probably pay for it immediately.
Right.
And he said, okay. And he said, well, I'll call you back. And I didn't know what he was doing. So, okay, I gave my number to him. He walked next door to the next door neighbour. And he said to the next door neighbour, well, I've got a guy from Sydney who will buy my 911. Why is it taking me so long to do the deal? And she says, I've got the money. It just didn't suit me to buy it immediately. So he said to her, well, you're now second reserve. I'm bringing that guy back in Sydney.
Really?
So he rang me. And remember, I'd only seen 4 photos. I hadn't seen a photo of the interior. I had a photo of the front, the back, and each side. That's it.
Wow.
But I thought, well, you can't go too far wrong. It's a 73 Australian delivered 911.
What?
And
sorry, Geoff. What is? And this probably might be a stupid question. What is TE when you said TE coupe? It's not a 911T.
Okay.
It's not a 911E. It's a TE. What is that?
Okay, it is a T. But
Okay.
what they did right near the end, it's what they call a 73.5. So it's right near the end of the small bumper production.
Okay.
And at the time, for the US market, they were putting, what's it called? They were putting fuel injection on the Ts.
Okay.
So normally a T would be carburetted,
Yes.
but E is for injection. Now, supposedly there were no TEs ever sold to Australia. Well, that's not quite right because mine was.
Right.
So there was one, and that was mine. And that's what a T is. So it's a T,
Okay.
but it's a fuel-injected T. But they went to the new fuel injection,
Yes.
which is what they ran on the 2.7s and the 3 litres all the way through. So it's the new injection as well.
Because I've heard that mentioned before that a 73.5 is actually the pick. I don't know whether that's in the 911S, but I've read about it and I've heard people talk about it, that the 73.5 is a special car. Is that true?
Look, my car has got, it's got some really good stuff to it. And I know you normally ask, could you please explain the specs of the car?
Yeah, I want you to explain that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. The specs were, the car was tourist delivered. So it was picked up at the factory by the first owner. It was ordered new via Chateau Motors South Australia. The first owner was a lady called Elizabeth Rohan, who sadly passed away. But she came from a very well-known named family. I won't say the name, but it's her maiden name. She bought the car herself. She ordered it in aubergine, which is dark purple,
Yep.
with beige leatherette, with corduroy inserts.
Nice.
It was optioned with full S appearance group.
Okay.
It was also optioned with the alloy wheels. It had electric aerial, front sway bar, only a single rearview mirror. Anyway, that's what it was originally. When I looked at the car, it had basically a guard's red paint job and a 3 litre in the back. Anyway,
Right.
So it was a hot rod when I bought it.
Oh, right. It was a hot rod, so they actually changed the color as well. You know that you just said
No,
it was
no.
a. You just said it.
She, the first owner changed the colour.
Oh, the first owner.
Yes, she had it professionally repainted red.
Okay.
She had it aubergine for some years, and she had it colour changed. The first owner. So when I say hot rod, all they've done is put tombstone seats in it,
Yes.
a Momo steering wheel,
Yes.
7-inch wide rims on the back, but the guards were still standard. So the skinny tyres with fat rims.
Okay.
And she had a SC 3 litre in the back of it. And that was it. That was the amount of hot rodding.
Do you think the SC 3 litre in the back was because the original engine had a problem and it was just one of those things where they just swapped out the engine with something else that, was in a shop or something? Or you think it was actually intentional that she wanted this bigger engine?
Well, this is when we're going to talk about researching your history. So to finish the story on buying the car, he called me back and said, if you're serious, Geoff, I'll sell you the car.
Okay.
And I said, well, you haven't told me a price. Now, this is probably 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, I want $65,000 for it. And I nearly fell off the chair.
Yeah.
And I said, I can transfer that to you. And he said, oh, no, I've got a small loan to pay and I want the rest in cash. So I ended up paying off a small loan for him, which was $29,000.
Right.
And I hopped in a plane and flew up to Benora Point, which is 1,000 kilometres from Sydney. Caught a cab from Coolangatta Airport to his place.
Right.
With a backpack with the balance in cash. I walked in. He opened the door of the garage, and the thing was in really nice condition. It was a lovely car. It had personalised plates that had been on there since the 70s, which were
very cool.
ITS 911. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Very cool.
Very cool. And they were on there. That was part of the deal. I hopped in it, turned the key, and drove 1,000 kilometres home in the car without missing a beat.
I don't know. Is that there's a lot of trust there, right? Of course, it's your friend that told you about it, and you've handed over money. You haven't even seen the car, like you said. You got a few scratchy photos, and it turned out okay. Would you recommend that way of buying a 911 today, though? Would you? I mean, this was only 5 years ago, so it's not a long time ago, but there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of trust there, right? That's because of your friend.
Look, what's the worst that can happen? And look, I know 65,000 is a lot of money, in the scheme of things, but
not for a 911T. Not for a 911T.
You're not going to get hurt at that sort of level. So
yeah,
I didn't think that even if it was a fiberglass body, as long as the compliance plate was there, I was probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
But the car was better than I expected.
That's fantastic. I love these stories, though. This was a tourist delivery, like you said. This woman ordered this car in 73. It was a tourist delivery, like you said. And she ordered it, she picked the color aubergine, and then she decides to change it to red. You know what I mean? Like the story behind that in itself, that, this was something that she chose, and then she thought, okay, I need something, I want to change, it's like changing a T-shirt or something.
Well, she wanted to change a couple of years later.
Yeah.
The thing was, when I bought that car, of course, I said to him, do you have any receipts or anything? And he says, I've got a cardboard box. I don't know what's in that. He pulled the cardboard box out, and it had all the logbooks, all the service books.
Fantastic.
The bit of paper they give you when you get a tourist delivery vehicle to say how to read the road signs in Germany. It was just amazing. It was all there.
So is this a keeper? This is restored, right? So what color? It's not red anymore, though, is it? Did you restore this one?
I put it back to aubergine. But look, with this car, I do track all its history, and I tracked back a few owners. One of the owners, and that's the thing. Some of the tricks are with the distinctive number plate like that. I found you can go to the Sydney Morning Herald archives and find if it's been advertised before, which it was. I found when she sold it, so I have a copy of that. But I tracked the owners, and one of the owners was from just the phone number that was in an old advertising that I found online at the Herald, archives.
Right.
And you talk to these people, and I tracked down one of the owners. He passed away, but his wife was at Borkham Hills, and she was still alive. And she said, "Wow, you've got Ron's old car?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "The back shed is all those pieces that he pulled off that car. Could you come over and please pick them up?"
Really? Wow.
And I said, "Really?" So I went over there, and she had the original seats.
Yes.
The seats that had been pulled out, she had the seats.
Yeah.
Rear view mirror, seat belts.
Wow.
Radio, the Frankfurt Blarplonk radio.
Wow. What a find.
Anyway, she wouldn't. So with all of these parts, she wouldn't take any money. She said, "You're doing me a favour getting rid of all this old junk," including the original spare wheel that was there as well.
She just wanted it out of there. She'd just been holding it for so long and just thought, now you're going to take it away. You're saving me.
I took her over bunches of flowers. I took her to lunch. I took her chocolates. She wouldn't take any money, but I took her for a ride in the car.
Oh, that's nice.
I went round to both her daughter's place and took all the grandkids for a ride in Granddad's old car.
Oh, that's good.
Just anything I could do for her, I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, tracking the history on that car, it all just came back together. And so the main part of that car, this is the crux of the story on that 911, was, of course, it's not matching numbers.
Right.
In the receipts, I could see that the motor had been swapped out in the early 80s. In fact, It was the detective who'd done it because it was smoky, and he'd swapped it out with Bob Wynn. So the 3 litre came from Bob Wim Auto. I rang Bob, who I know, and he says, Geoff, you're talking 1980 something. I can't remember what happened to the motor.
Yeah.
So undeterred, you can actually do a freedom of information. This is what people need to know. You can do a freedom of information and get a letter sent to the current owner of a certain engine number out there. I know it sounds unbelievable. This is true, or you can use other methods, but I managed to track down who had the motor in a car last.
Oh, right.
And the motor had been in a car, and the thing was the registration was very distinctive.
Right.
And as soon as I Googled the registration, it was a historic Porsche rally car.
Right.
Anyway, the rally car was looked after by Grant at Auto House.
Oh, really?
So I ring Grant and said, Grant, by any chance, would you have a 2.4 out of a 73 911, engine number, blah, 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 blah? And he says, what car's it out of? And I said, I told him the name of the last registered owner.
Yeah.
And I said, you look after this chap's cars, and it's a historic rally car. And he says, well, he's got 5 spare motors for that car. And Grant kindly rang me back and said, Geoff, we have your motor here. I hopped straight in.
Really? So you got the original motor back?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
I hopped in a car, drove straight over to Auto House at Chatswood, and I said to Grant, I took the 911. I drove the 911 there.
Wow.
And I said, Grant, I've got to have that motor. And he says, well, this chap, he actually lives in New York. He doesn't need any money. He doesn't sell anything. And but I said, he's got five motors. Yeah, well, the motor hadn't run for 12 years.
Right.
The last time it run, it did the London to Sydney rally all through Africa. So the motor had been done up to the nines by Auto House. So it's got all the best business. She's got RS 2.7 barrels, Carello rods. It's got everything.
Beautiful.
Anyway, I said to Grant, what's the motor worth as an unknown, not run for 12 years, sitting on the ground there? And he says, people pay 10, for an unknown quantity. And I pulled out 10 grand cash, and I said to Grant, tell your chap who's in New York. He's an Australian who lives in New York.
Yeah.
When he comes back, there's some walking around money. If you please kindly sell the poor bastard that motor.
Yeah.
And the owner of the motor liked the story, and he liked the fact that it was going to go back to the original car, and he accepted my 10 grand, and I bought the original matching number motor back for that 73.
Fantastic. And that's what's in the car today.
Well, it's in the car. Yeah, actually, it's in the car today because I left. We've had that motor rebuilt, pulled apart. It was all the good stuff.
Yep.
I use I'll keep it private, but a very, very good mechanic. He works from home. That motor is absolutely beautiful. I wasn't going to put it back in the 911 because the 911 is a lot of fun with the 3 litre in it.
Right.
And a friend of mine has a 69 911S, right-hand drive, English delivered, and he graciously offered me a drive of that car. And when I drove a car with a smaller capacity, that smaller capacity motors will wind. SC motors are a lovely motor, but they don't wind like the early girl motors.
Right.
And that made up my mind. So we pulled the 3 litre out of it, and we've just put in the original matching number motor back into the car.
Oh, that's great.
I haven't driven it with the original motor yet.
Oh, right.
Even though I've driven that car quite a lot. I've driven the wheels off that car, but I haven't driven it with the original motor. No.
So what did you do with the 3 litre that was in it? You holding on to that one?
No, I sold it.
Sold it?
And that's the thing. I paid $10,000 for the motor, the original matching numbers, and a friend of mine really wanted the 3 litre because the 3 litre was quite healthy.
Yep.
And I sold it, yes.
Wow. All right, a great story. So that's a 1973. That's a 911 TE, right-hand drive. Let's get into my favorite, as everyone knows. I keep umming and ahhing and going backwards and forwards, but I still want one. The next car. What did you get next? What is number 19?
1967 short wheelbase 912 right-hand drive in polo red with black trim. Sorry. Option from you with 5-speed It was also option with Coney shock absorbers, extended hub steering wheel, leather covered, and I think that's about it.
So when did you get that one? When did you get the 912? And you sent me images of it. I'll tell the listeners it's beautiful. It really is. And and everyone knows I'm not a big red fan, but I there's an exception when it comes to the red in the 912. It actually does look really cool in the polo red. When did you acquire that one, Geoff?
I'm not a red fan either. I'd rather any other colour but red. But at the end of the day, with these cars, you buy what's there. And what happened with that car was a friend of mine who owned it. And I only bought that car April last year.
Okay.
And it was the start of COVID.
Yep.
So COVID hit in February. He was retired. He has a couple of Porsches, but his wife was still working. Anyway, due to COVID, she wasn't working anymore, and he had to change his life. So one of the Porsches had to go. And I heard a whisper through some of my mates, and I know him, and I'd actually ridden in the 912 before. I know the car, but I called him up and said, "Well, look, can we have a chat?" And we did. So the thing was, he'd owned the car for 32 years.
Yes.
And in 32 years, I think he'd spent $1,200 on it. That was it.
Wow.
It needed. It was still club registered. It was running.
Yep.
But it really needed a lot of love, and I'm not worried to say the price. This was a COVID purchase, which is interesting, and I think even then, 912s weren't really that big a deal. I don't think.
I was, and I'll interrupt for a second. I ummed and ahed about the sand beige one that was for sale in Melbourne. 69 sand beige that was for sale at the beginning of COVID, and I didn't buy it, and I should have bought it, and it was $90,000. And that's my biggest regret. That's the 912 that I really love, because I love that sand beige color. I think it's, for me, it's a great color. And that was that guy advertised that at the beginning of 2020, I think. He had it at 82, and then he put it up to 89. It took ages to sell. I actually did talk to him about it, but I never went through with it because it was just, I don't know, it just seemed too difficult from where I was at the time, being in Bahrain.
I think that it really, you look at the three cars that I've got, the Speedster, the 73 and the 912, which are all wanted type cars, I guess.
Yes.
None of them were a car sales or advertising. They were all word of mouth, all three of my cars.
That's what I was going to get into, that the fact that, you found these cars, and it just shows you that, you can't, the advertised cars, sure there's advertised cars, but the good cars are the ones that aren't advertised, aren't they? It's the ones through word of mouth. It's the ones that, a neighbor's got this and you might like it, or it's the ones where people stumble across, someone's told me the story where they stumble across a garage and then someone's got a old 911 in there and it's like, oh, that just, they want to get rid of it. Do you want it? Those stories still exist. But what I think is interesting, Geoff...
I think, Michael, you make your own luck. I think you do make your own luck. But the other thing is, if you seriously want a 912 or a 356 or a 911T or any of this stuff, you've also got to have dry powder. You've got to have a little bit of money. I'm not saying lots of money, but you've got to have your budget ready. So when a deal is sitting there in front of you and you think you want that deal, you've got to be able to do that deal.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
With the 912, here's the bit I'm going to break your heart with. When I was talking to the owner and I said, well, okay, how much do you want for it?
Yeah.
And I bought that car for $45,000.
What?
That was May last year.
So that's May last year. That's the same time that the sand beige 169 was for sale in Melbourne. So, and this is a right-hand drive.
Well,
this is a right-hand drive. The sand beige was a left-hand drive. It was a New York car. That one was a New York car.
Well, the other thing is the 912 came with its original logbooks.
Yep.
It did have receipts for the owner before the chap I bought it off, because the chap I bought it off literally
did nothing.
The rubbers had petrified. It just hadn't had any money spent on it. It was so... I was so not confident in that car. I'd actually ridden with the owner back from Melbourne in that car several years prior, and we nearly didn't make it then. So the deal was I paid $45,000 and he had to bring it to my work because I wasn't going to drive it that bad.
That price, And obviously, a lot of people who own 912s in the UK that I talk to regularly. Obviously, the 912 prices have gone a bit crazy, right? Bring a trailer in the US has been part of the culprit to this. I mean, 912 prices have jumped a lot, and I've always said that even on Beverly Hills Car Club, that has not great examples or whatever, that was selling for 29,000 are now selling for 59,000. Almost the same sort of car that they were selling, beginning of 2020. So the prices have jumped a lot. What I'm interested in, though, and I'm sure the listeners are too, is you've got this 356 Speedster, right, under restoration. You've got the 911 TE. You've had lots of 356s. You've had other 911s, SCs, and G50s. What was it about the 912? Because everyone knows the 912 is not everyone's first choice. It's become people's choice because of the price, and then now people are appreciating the 912 for what it is. The lightness of it, even with that smaller engine. What was it that made you think I need a 912 in my collection?
I'd never owned one. I'd heard good things. And the thing that interested me was it's a 356 motor, of course, but it's got the 5-speed gearbox, and which really interested me. This one's got the 5-speed. And I don't know. He had 2 Porsches I could have bought, and that was the one. I actually chose that one because it just really interested me. And I don't like red. I don't like red either. But it was red, so that's what it is. But the thing with that car was, it was, once again, I tracked down the previous owner to that car. And this is the interesting. So once again, I start making my phone calls and working out. Now, the previous owner of that car, who'd owned it 32, 34 years ago, whatever it is, he's in his 80s, but he owns a Mercedes service centre here at Leichhardt in Sydney.
Really?
Same name. I thought, well, that's a coincidence. I'll ring him. And I rang him, and he was over the moon. The car was still around.
Wow.
And he said to me, I bought that car when it was 6 months old.
Wow.
And I went, you're joking. So I said, look, the car is here at my office. If you'd like to come here, we can get 2 chairs and we can just sit there and talk about the history of the car. And he says, I'll be there in an hour. And he was. We sat down, had a coffee, and then he starts laying out the history on this car. It just made my research so much easier because he did it all for me because he was the owner.
Yeah.
And have we got time to talk about the history of this car? Because it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, sure. Let's keep going. So, but this is the thing. You said it was delivered in Kenya, right?
Yeah, Mombasa. Kenya.
In Mombasa. So.
Oh, well, it went through the port of Mombasa. I think Nairobi. Is that? Yeah, the car's Kenyan delivered. It was delivered through a dealer called.
How did it end up in Australia?
He was an Australian that was working in Kenya.
Oh, okay.
And he was a mechanic by trade.
Right.
And his wife was a lawyer. And what had happened was, so he was into MGs and the like. And a friend of his, I hope I get the guy's name right, Peter Sargentson, bought the car brand new, the 912, and he bought it to do circuit racing, club racing and rallying. He used it for 6 months in circuit racing and rallying, and I've actually got a picture of the thing racing on the circuit over there. And then he realised it's not quick enough.
Right.
So I think he was quite tall. That's why he ordered the extended hub steering wheel, because tall people have the extended hub steering wheel so they can get the seat position, get the seat back further for the pedals. But of course, the steering wheel wasn't there when I bought the car, and we'll get to that. He owned it 6 months. So he said to the Porsche dealer over there, which is also the VW dealer, which is also an Esso petrol station, Gordon Crowe. Gordon was going to Stuttgart. So he said to Gordon, the 912's not quick enough. I want a 911S, because they were just being released.
Yes.
He wanted one of those. Gordon goes to the factory and walks past the works department, and they're building what's called, and some of the real Porsche nuts will know these cars, they were building 911 TSs, which are full race cars. So they're basically the RS before there was an RS.
Right. And
he managed to negotiate a deal to get one of these, what am I saying? ST.
Yes.
So he negotiated at the same price as an S to get an ST, right-hand drive in burnt orange.
Wow.
That car, I think it just changed hands in the UK for some criminal amount of money. It's a very, very rare car. It's, like I said, an RS before there was an RS. So Bob gets this 912 in Kenya. There are only 5 Porsches in Kenya.
Yep.
And what happens is every year the East African Rally, very famous rally,
Yes.
and the Porsche enter a race team. A race rally team. At the time, not then a racing driver, but the actual head mechanic in charge of the team was a chap called Jürgen Barth.
Yes.
Relation to yours? I don't know.
No. I had to look twice at that when you sent that to me, and it's like slight different spelling, but yeah, sounds the same.
Yeah. Well, Jürgen Barth ended up as a very famous racing driver for Porsche, but before that he was they're all engineers, but he was a mechanic, but he was also in charge of the rally team. So when he was over there with their factory rally car in 1968, I believe it was.
Yes.
He Bob was also a mechanic, and they based themselves out of course, the Porsche dealership over there. Bob assisted them. So when they went back took the rally car back to Stuttgart, Bob got gifted the genuine Fuchs alloys off the race car, and they were put onto the 912.
Wow.
The following year, when they came out again, Bob would help them, and they gifted the 911S steering wheel off the rally car for the 912.
Wow.
The year after that...
So tell me you have those, right? You have those.
I still have those. So genuine Porsche. So when I bought this car, when I bought the 912, it came on which are quite rare, it came on a set of 911S alloys, date stamp 67.
Okay.
But they are 15 by 5.5. So
right.
Very, very early 911S rims. Basically, they only released 911S in 67. So these rims had red paint on the centres in certain positions on all 4 wheels.
Right.
And I thought a kid had done it. Anyway, one of the historians of one of the Type 901 associations, that their factory rally markings, these wheels have never been restored. So I'm lucky the guy I bought the car with never did anything, so he never restored them. When I talked to Bob knew they were, he said, well, that's where they came. They came from the rally car, and they had the markings on the wheels, something to do with those markings were for that rally car, something like that. But
wow.
I still have the Fuchsias, yes.
Yes.
They're not on the car at the moment because my idea was to bring it back to a stock-looking car, but I have the genuine steering wheel. I have the Fuchsias as well.
That's a great story. Great things to have, and sort of uncovered, right?
Well,
like just something you just sort of come across.
That's right. No one knew that.
No one knew it. Yeah, and the value of that.
I said to the previous owner, those wheels would probably be valuable to someone trying to rebuild the original factory rally car because they're unrestored. They've still got the factory red paint on them. Never been touched.
The historic value of that steering wheel and the stories and the Fuchs, like it's just crazy what you just come across. And I hate to say it, you paid $45,000 for this car.
On a yeah, but they're very rare parts on a very normal little car.
Yeah.
But look, here's the other thing. Okay, when I bought the 912, the only departures from original were those wheels, the steering wheel,
yep,
cassette player in the dashboard. The car had a short shift gear lever.
Right. It
had Weber carburetors.
Right.
Now, all the original bits came with the car. So I got the original Solexes. I got the original gear stick. I got the original hubcaps, but I didn't get the original wheels because I said to Bob, did you bring the steel wheels when you came out because when they emigrated, he said, no, they were steel wheels. Why would I bother bringing them?
Yeah.
So he didn't bring the wheel.
Okay.
But he bought the hubcaps. So
are they the hubcaps you sent me the image of? You have the original hubcaps.
They're the hubcaps the car was delivered with. The wheels, I've managed to track down a set of steel rims.
Yeah.
Date stamped 5th month 67 for a set of 5 out of South Australia.
Okay.
And I had to restore them, but the wheels matched the car. Those hubcap wheels matched the car. But the point with these cars, any car, this is the way I work is Some people would probably like that car the way I bought it. The Fuchs alloys, the 911S steering wheel, the Weber carbies, the short shift.
Yep.
For me, seeing I'd never had a 912, I put it all back to original. So she's got standard gear stick back in it. I've got the original 912 steering wheel on it. I've got the original Solexes rebuilt and back on the car. The motor's been rebuilt.
I would do the same,
and
Jeff.
I put cut wheel.
Yeah, I would do the same. That's what I like. I like it original for the 912.
But yeah, the wheels, the Fuchsias, of course, I've still got the tyres are date stamped 34 years old. The Michelins are 34 years on.
Yeah.
So they're still holding air. So I've got the original Fuchs wheels. I just don't know what to do with them.
Just keep them.
I'm not throwing them away. I'll just keep them.
Yeah, just keep them. Part of the history, part of the story. How do you go? A quick question. I mean, we're going to have to end soon because we're getting past the hour. But
sorry,
no, not at all. But I just want to say about the Solex carburetors, and I know a lot of people change it to Weber. I'm a fan of having the original carbs on the car. Is there a good specialist in Sydney that fixes those, that can tune them properly, can make them perfect?
Yes, yeah, there is. I've used my Porsche mechanic who I use. He's rebuilt them and he does beautiful work. But there's a company called Carburetor Services on Parramatta Road that do beautiful work as well, if you don't know a mechanic.
Right.
And there are people, he rebuilt the motor as well as have done the carbies. So with that car, the 912, when COVID hit, remember I bought this car when COVID hit.
Yes.
I walked next door to a panel shop at my work, and they like Porsches, and they saw this lovely classic old Porsche. And people really want to help you, especially on the classic old Porsches. So he said, look, I've got all these guys standing around doing nothing, because when COVID hit, people stopped doing things. People stopped getting their cars painted or repaired. He says, we can paint it, but we don't know how to pull it apart. And I said, well, that's fine, I'll pull it apart. So I pulled it apart, gave it to him. They painted that car, but it's a good paint job. I've had the motor rebuilt, the suspension done. I'm leaving the trim alone, and it's just a driver car. But once again,
sorry, Jeff, the original paint was a bit rough, was it?
Yeah, I thought it had rust because it had bubbles.
Okay,
but it wasn't. It was a paint reaction because the car coming out of Kenya, there was a reaction. It must have been with all the bloody red dust.
Yeah.
So when we pulled the paint off it, there was no rust.
Right. Well, that's good.
No rust at all. So we're very lucky. The thing with this car is, and I know everyone talks about matching numbers, this car has a blank engine case. It's a factory replacement engine case. So there is no engine number at all stamped on the engine case.
Okay.
So I say to Bob, I said, did you change the engine case? Remember, he was a mechanic. And he said, Jeff, with the red dust in Kenya, he said, this car's had 2 Porsche factory replacement engine cases because the red dust just killed the motors, just killed them. So I've got a motor in that car without an engine number on it. The engine number is engraved on the generator stand.
I think I've seen cars advertised with that, 912s or 911s with that, where it doesn't have the engine number. And people were like correcting them and saying it wasn't a matching numbers. What is this engine? How come it has a weird engine number or something? I remember seeing it. It might have been Bring a Trailer or something in the comments, or collecting cars where people put all their comments down. And I remember seeing that.
But
so that's the reason.
Even now, you can go to Porsche and buy a replacement case.
Yeah, exactly. You can't you? Yeah. Okay, so your 3 current Porsches, like I said, we're getting towards the end here, Jeff, but your 3 current Porsches, you've got the 68 912, beautiful. I'm very envious of that one. The 1973 911 Porsche TE, and your 56 Speedster. Which one do you think is going to get the most road time?
The 912.
The 912.
And I'm not saying that because you like 912s. The 912, because the 912 has been built as a driver. The problem with the 911 is it's been a very expensive restoration with all the right people have done all the right things.
Yes.
And it is pristine. Trim was done in Melbourne by the guy who does all of the trim work for Porsche Classics. That's Porsche Australia, for their Classic division. The motor was rebuilt. The 2.4 was rebuilt by the guy who does, my mechanic who does the motors for Porsche Classic division.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. If you buy a 912, you could project manage, restore it, and use all the right people and get the great results. I'm my own worst enemy with that 911 because I used all the right people, body, trim. East Coast suspension, did all of this suspension setup. I used all the right people. That 911 is spectacular, and I'm just about too scared to use it this day.
How are you going to be with the Speedster?
Oh, that'll be. I don't even want to think. I don't know. I just can't even tell you.
That's going to be harder. So the 912's a one. Okay, let's move on.
The 912's a driver. Yeah.
912's a driver. So let's get on to the last part of the podcast that I always like to ask for all the overseas listeners. People are going to be able to travel again soon. I've got my ticket to Australia after waiting 3 hours on the phone the other day to Singapore Airlines. People can travel if they come into Australia, Geoff. And they want to take their 911, or people who live in Sydney or Australia, they want to take their 911 on a great road. What's one of your favourite roads you're going to take your 912 on, or you have taken the 912 on?
Well, I like going to Akuna Bay for a coffee. Now, the people around the world, Akuna Bay is Waratah National Park, home of Skippy. But there's some lovely, during the week, there's some lovely little windy roads. It's still in Sydney. It's nice and close. There's water, there's scenery, there's twisty stuff as long as the people aren't out on their bicycles. And it's, you can basically just do that quick little run in, an hour or two, and it's, you can get back on with your day. I enjoy that run.
I might have to do that. Is that's not the road past Church Point there off Mona Vale Road where you go around the back? It's not that road, is it? That cuts through the national park.
Keep in mind you're talking to a guy who grew up in Queensland. Waratah National Park. So I know how to get there. It's off. Is it off? I'm trying to think of the name of the road. I can't even. Yeah, it is like if you go into the beaches. Yes, it's off onto your left. That's correct.
Yeah, I think I know that one. I think I've been on that road. I think I know the road you mean.
Yeah, well, it's called Akuna Bay. There's a lovely little cafe there, but really twisty, lovely roads, but
nice.
Not on the weekend. If you do it during the week, you could burn a couple of very pleasant hours up, and then you can get, back to the office or, back to doing your chores around the house. For me,
fantastic.
So I can normally sneak off there. Yes,
Geoff, what a great story. 20 plus years. 20 plus years. Your wife must be very enthusiastic about Porsches as well. If you've had that many Porsches over the 19 Porsches since
she turned a blind eye. But it wasn't just 356s. I mean, maybe in future we can talk about the 928S I had, or the Porsche Boxster S, and just other things that have come. But I like the three that I've got. I'm sort of happy with where I'm at the moment.
So you stopped looking? I always like to ask that question. You stopped looking?
No, none of us stopped looking. We're always looking. And even though I don't even believe I'd be able to get a deal off car sales, because everyone wants a lot, but no, I'm always looking, because I sort of thought, like I said, the 73 will probably not stay with me forever. The 912, it's not going anywhere.
Yep.
And the Speedster is my dream 356. But the 73, if I sold that, I'd like a car like your co-host Steve's car. That's what I would like. I'd like one of those. So that 73 is probably getting...
It's probably a direct swap, isn't it? It's probably a direct swap with some money back to you, I think.
Can you ask Steve? I do like 73. Steve is like
I don't know.
A classic Australian delivered 73.
Steve and his classic. Steve's not big into the classics. He still doesn't understand my 912 thing that I want. He doesn't understand it. I know he doesn't. But it's all about the experience. Geoff?
Look, they're absolutely two different things. But yeah, talk to Steve. You never know, he might do a deal for me.
I'll tell him. I'll send him a message and tell him that you're interested. Hey, I'm going to be looking for that $45,000. I'm going to be looking for that $45,000 912. I'm going to have to start talking to more people, I think, and stop looking at car sales.
No, you need to join some of the things like the 356 registry, the Type 901. Some of those clubs, those specialist clubs, I'm members of.
Yep.
You get to know the people, and then all of a sudden, by word of mouth, that's how you buy your cars. That's what works for me.
Yep, and you've proven it today with the cars you own. All through word of mouth, all through doing and like you said, being ready to do the deal there and then. Having the money and just going, yep, okay, I'll take it. And I think that's really important as well. Geoff, anything you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, well, here's the other thing. All three of my cars, I didn't do any, what do you call it, your PPIs? Sorry, no PPIs on all these old cars that I've got. It doesn't seem to work. Even when I bought my Boxster S, there was I had no inspection done. I just took a leap of faith and just bought it.
Took a chance. How bad can it be? When you're spending that sort of money on some of them, I guess it's you're going to have to do work on them, don't you? You know that you're going to have to fix certain things. Has the 912 been pretty reliable though? Before we go, the 912, you haven't had any issues with it so far?
Well, on Saturday, 7 o'clock, I got up early. I took it from here to Picton. If you know, I live in near the North Shore, so yes. Probably a bit over an hour each way. I sat between 70 to 75 mile an hour all the way. It was just like a low-flying jet. It very torquey little motor, absolutely zips along beautifully. The thing with the early air cools, if you get them right, the quicker you go, the cooler they run. I know. Sorry. Quicker you go, the hotter they run. But in traffic, they cool down.
Right.
They're really, you get them sorted, and they cost you nothing once they're sorted. They're just, you basically only have to do the oil and hit the grease points. They're really great once you get past the initial setup.
Fantastic. I definitely have to get one, that's for sure. I definitely have to get one. I'm still looking.
Well, you're always welcome to give mine a run if you get back in, November? I can throw you the keys and you can have a go. That's
very generous. I'd definitely love to see your cars, Geoff, that's for sure. I'd love to see it when you've got the three of them together. I'd love to see the 12 and the 911T and the Speedster. I mean, what a great collection. I'm sure all the listeners have really enjoyed it today. I mean, like the wealth of experience that you have.
When the Michael Bar Cars and Coffee happens, we can all just swap keys, and I'll be standing next to Steve when we're swapping keys. We'll see how we go.
See how you go. I know a lot of people have been saying that we should have a PorscheCooled Cars and Coffee when I get back. I've got people from Sydney already asking me about that, so there will definitely be something organised. We'll do a drive for sure. Once my car's gone to the house and sorted.
I'm very happy to hand my keys to other Porsche owners if they would like to try a classic, because I think it's important that people see what these cars are all about. Because, look, I've had 911s in period. I've had 4 911s and I've still got one. But they're great cars. But the early stuff is also really lovely. It's a different thing, but it's lovely.
Yeah. Do you own a modern 911 as well? No. Have you owned a modern 911?
Never. Nope.
Okay.
Never.
I think that's a good way to end. Never own a modern 911.
I've got modern cars, but I don't have a modern 911. No, okay. Never own one, but I do admire them. And you guys are swinging me around. I'll get there in the end.
Once you see my 997, Geoff, you want one. No, you want Steve's though, because this is a GT, rarer.
No, yours would be fine. But I think, there's the point. Your car is about, it's probably equivalent to a 912 in money. And, you never know. Let's go on our drive.
Yeah, true. Tempting. All right, Geoff, thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. I know the listeners will enjoy this one too. And like I said, your wealth of experience, 20 years, 19 Porsches, the three that you have now, the 73 911T, Australian delivered, right-hand drive, back to aubergine, back to its original color, the 68 912, Polo Red, red's not that bad, Coupe, 5-speed, not the 4-speed, and the 56 356A Speedster, which you're getting restored. I mean, what a collection. I really appreciate you coming on today, Geoff. Thanks so much for sharing your story on the podcast.
No problems. Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure.
All right, everyone. Like I said, that's Geoff coming in from Sydney, Australia. That's it for the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly did. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.